So, in today's session, we'll start off with an introduction to our wonderful presenter and a little bit about midstream lighting. And we'll do a quick poll. And then we're heading to the main presentation when I'll hand over to Yuli and he will talk about what is a mobile tower and who uses it, mobile towers versus permanent lighting solutions, practical use cases for the mobile tower, and when a mobile tower is the best choice and how to make that choice. So, first off, we have our wonderful presenter, Mr. Yuli Grigg, who is co-founder and commercial director here at Midstream Lighting. Yuli has so much knowledge on all things aviation. He's been working on projects for over 15 years, and that's everything from at the very beginning, the lighting design, helping customers plan their project, to obviously helping deliver those projects. And I'm Sophie, your host today. I'm head of marketing here at Midstream Lighting. So for those of you who don't know, we're Midstream Lighting, a full turnkey solution provider of all things LED lighting. And we work in our three specialist subjects. So that's aviation, maritime, and sports. And we really are specialists, not generalists. They're the only sectors we work in, and we make our products specifically for their needs. And we offer a full turnkey solution. So that's everything from at the beginning of your project to maybe a lighting design, helping you plan. Are there any specialist requirements you need to meet? Maybe iCal, things like that. To obviously delivering the products to you, helping with installation. And we really pride ourselves in our training and education and sharing our knowledge, which is obviously why we're here today doing a webinar. So in a moment, a box will pop up on your screen. If you could just answer this for you, we'd love to know if you currently have a mobile tower. So that should just pop up on your screen now. And let us know if you've got one or not.
I think this obviously relates to those that have customers, which are airport operators and clients. So if you or your customers are currently using mobile lighting towers, then click yes.
Yes, very good. Thank you, Yuli.
Because some of our partners, like Antonio, doesn't have his own mobile tower, but I think some of his customers have been thinking about it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, wonderful. Good response. Thank you, everyone. So at the moment, 27% of you have a mobile tower, which is good to see. So some of you may already know about this, what we're going to go on to next, but there may be some uses that you're not doing at the moment that you could do. Okay. So over to you, Lee.
Thanks, Soph. I actually can't see any slides,
Okay,
so
helpful.
I could do it from memory, but are they meant to be up or?
Yes. So in Zoom, you probably just need to switch back to the webinar.
Right.
Bear
Okay.
with us, everyone.
Right. I've got something, so that's fine.
Great.
Um, great. Okay. So it's actually a great topic because we've done over the years a lot of work with mobile towers and airports around the world. And it's sort of a unique solution, we think, because it addresses certain needs that airports may have, but we don't think there are many other solutions for it. But firstly, what is a mobile tower? A mobile tower is a set of projectors. Typically, they can be used any kind. It could use any kind of lighting, but generally they are floodlights that are on a mobile unit, which can have a some kind of a lifting mechanism to raise the lights up to a certain height. And normally in airports, we're using our system, which goes up to about 8.5, 9 meters. And it uses either two options, either a manual winch, which you can use your hand to wind it up, or it's a hydraulic. So you press a button and this goes up. And the idea is that when you need to illuminate an area, you start up the machine, you raise the tower up to 9 meters, and then you can, illuminate the area around you. What's interesting about this particular machine that we're showing a picture of, this is the Midstream mobile tower, and of course there are others, is that we use our proprietary LED system on this. So it allows us to have a low glare, high output, high efficiency, and a large spread of light. So it's, as you know, our luminaires are designed for apron application. So this machine itself has four of our lights and allows with two machines sitting next to an aircraft apron to illuminate anything from code C all the way to code F, size of stands with just two machines. And they're designed like that because, we obviously understand that there are two critical elements here. One is the mechanical aspect, moving the machine, getting it up and running, the power aspects of it, whether it's a generator or whether it's just used through a power cable. And the second aspect is the lighting. And that is where the two real niche expertise needs to come together to do it. So this machine, it has a fuel tank which is diesel. So if it's running on diesel, it can run really for about 2 weeks, working at all hours of the night on a full tank. And if we're only really operating it up to about midnight, then it can really run for about a month, completely autonomously. So it can come on and off, and using a photocell during the hours of darkness or on a timer. So we can set a timer to come on at certain periods during the night. So, for example, up to midnight and then early in the morning as well. So this is what the machine is. It basically allows you to move your apron floodlighting around. And when you're finished with it, you can bring it down again. It's about, I think, 2 meters in height when it's completely down, and you can store it in a warehouse and put it into a container and move it. So that's what it is. And let's see what else we can say about it. So where has this particular unit been employed already? Quite a lot. It's There's a list here which you can see, but it covers about 15 airports in Greece, so all the island airports, which we had worked with together when the Fraport privatization happened. So all of those airports took mobile towers. We worked with mobile towers in France, in the UK, in Poland, in Saudi Arabia, even as far away as Seychelles. Our first customers actually were London Gatwick Airport and I think Doncaster, then a few Italian airports. And our biggest user of this system is basically our customer in Saudi Arabia. So really a great varied use case. And what's not included here are a few mobile towers which are in military applications, but those sites need to remain confidential. So this is kind of the high level explanation of what is the difference between a mobile tower, which is something that we're talking about today, or the permanent high mast apron lighting solution, which is the typical other way of lighting an apron to comply with international requirements such as ICAO or EASA, CAP 168, uh, RP37 in the US. So the mobile lighting tower, it's mobile, so it's easy to deploy and reposition. If we're doing illumination of an apron area here, then we can quite simply move it to another area in 6 months' time without any additional expense or complications. It doesn't require any fixed infrastructure, so we don't need to put in any kind of foundation works. We don't need to bolt it down. We can just move it into place. We can set it up, and it's ready to go within minutes. And it's also suitable for short term. So actually, if you need lighting in a certain area, next week, then it's not feasible to set something up which is permanent for construction reasons. Often power is limited. So this is perfect for deployment and very fast requirements. In fact, the military have a few of these, and they can just fly them around to, landing strips that they're doing on temporary basis, and they can be up and running within, as I said, minutes. And of course, they're self-contained. So, when we don't have access to power, or it's not available for one reason or another, then of course this is very quick. What I would say about it compared to the permanent lighting is that there are associated running costs. So whether it's the actual fuel that we need to put into it, assuming we're using the diesel generator version, not the a power cable version. Then obviously we also have to think about filters that need to be changed, the oil filters, the air filters. So there's a continuous maintenance and you need spare parts. So it's still an engine and it's not a leave and forget machine. You need to look after your engine. It needs to sometimes have troubleshooting. So there needs to be a level of knowledge about this kind of operation. On the other hand, the high masts, of course, they're built for continuous long-term operations. So they're already designed in. They're integrated with the existing systems. They have almost no day-to-day handling. They have the lowest running costs. If you're using LEDs, then typically it's a matter of maintenance and cleaning in 1 or 2 years. Every couple of years, it should really have a maintenance cycle. But beyond that, then there are no other running costs. Some mobile towers will be not used very often, and therefore they need fewer maintenance cycles. On the flip side, there may be certain permanent high mast towers with a mobile crown that need annual servicing to check the winch, lubrication, cables. So it's not a one size fits all, but generally we can say the rule of thumb is there are more associated running costs with the mobile tower. But of course, it does obviously solve a different set of challenges. So there are a couple of use cases of when it's a good idea or when might we need to use a mobile tower. So one area is apron expansion areas without permanent power. So this is, for example, an area that you've recently reclaimed as an airport, and you've started to put aircraft stands there, but until now they haven't dug the trenches, they haven't put in the electrical infrastructure. So while that's happening, whilst you have the expansion, and as you're applying for permits for the construction or you're waiting for some kind of additional electrical infrastructure, then this can be used. And one airport, for example, that uses it like this is Luxembourg Airport. They have an expansion area which doesn't have any installed infrastructure. And so they're using these mobile towers to help illuminate and ensure that that area is in compliance with the international regulation. So construction sites that need compliance stands is another great use case. And I have to highlight that we're not talking about illuminating the area that needs work and construction. Those are probably achieved with any kind of, on-site lighting, mobile lighting on generators. They don't need to be specialist because they're not lighting to any compliance standards. What we're talking about is actually when we have a construction at an airport, there will be temporary stands which will allow the use of the aircraft apron whilst construction is taking place, whether it's a new taxiway being built or resurfacing. So we have these temporary stands while construction is going on elsewhere. And we know that for the next 6 months or the next 3 months, we're going to need to use these aircraft stands. Now, some projects are really long-term constructions. King Salman Airport in Saudi is one where we have delivered, I think, over 30 or 40 of these machines, and they are in fact used whilst construction is going on in other parts of the airport. They're building new buildings, they're building terminals, they're building other infrastructure. Meanwhile, they're using some temporary aircraft stands to operate. So it's actually useful for fast deployment and it's for rolling work. So once this area is complete and they move across to another area, we can move our mobile towers and have a new area for aircraft stands somewhere else. So it's just great to be able to keep that rolling and not being stuck in a certain area for the lighting. So also interesting use case, OLS restricted areas. Often we are unable to put any permanent lighting there because of obstruction limitations. And typically that's when we have a design of an airport that aircraft stands are quite close to the runway. So in those scenarios, we can have a mobile tower which has a reduced height And in certain times when, for example, aircraft need to be illuminated, can be deployed. So it can be moved to the 9 meter height, illuminated while the aircraft is being refueled, or there's passenger movement, disembarking or embarking onto the aircraft, any kind of paperwork, and then it can be obviously brought down again to its normal nominal height or moved out of the way completely. So this is kind of a reliable way to ensure that you have lighting when you need it most, but also you're not putting in permanent structures that could penetrate the OLS surface. And there are a few anecdotes actually where we've had some airports thinking about putting them inside a dugout compartment with a way that when the aircraft arrives, when the wings pass over this, it opens and then the mobile towers come out and then they can go down again and close so that aircraft with wings can pass through that area. But I think it was more um, around the design and concept stage, but never really implemented. It'd be quite hard to make sure that never goes wrong. I can see scenarios where that could cause some problems. So yes, VAP, there's another use case actually where this could be good. These are typically for smaller airports, and it's used for example, VAP aircraft arriving. So things like large concerts. So you have private jets arriving with bands that need additional lighting. It could be state visits or royalty visits. So you need a lot of light as people are disembarking the aircraft more than you would typically use. So it would be once in a while for special events. So, for example, Geneva Airport in Switzerland, they have several times a year they have specialist shows. They have the watch show. They have a car show. And so when those shows are taking place, there's a huge number of additional flights, typically private flights. And so they use an overspill area in the car park to park those private jets. Sometimes people don't use a car park, they can use a general aviation area, a GA area, to put additional aircraft. So for these kind of reasons, it's great to have these towers because they can be deployed very quickly in the different areas. And also for seasonal stands, we talked about this with Sophie yesterday. Quite a few airports have high capacity peaks during the summer months. For example, the island airports or holiday stations, and some winter airports as well. So for some skiing airports in France and Switzerland, they're not really used very often, except for in peak sort of holiday seasons. So, for example, in those times when you have an extra large amount of flights coming in, then you can use supplementary lighting through mobile towers just during those seasonal usage. In fact, the Greek airports, the 14 regional airports of Greece on the islands, they really use a lot of mobile towers for that seasonal aspect when in the months of June, July, and August, there's a huge number of flights coming in. They just like to increase the level of light for safety and security, and also generally for operational reasons. So yeah, seasonally, it's quite often used in that respect. And of course, they can double up as something to help emergency services. So if you have any kind of incident on the airfield, whether that's involving police or the fire service, ambulance, or even customs and security, then these can be moved from other areas where they're providing operational light for emergency lighting very quickly to assist with any kind of special operations. Um, it's also very useful for areas where you're not going to have a light because something's happened. So an accident has um, made the permanent lighting unusable, whether a generator's come out or something's hit the mast and it's fallen over, or there's been a massive lightning strike or some kind of other EMS attack. Then it could even be something as benign or actually as serious, but a cyber attack has knocked out the lighting. We've had instances in Heathrow where there was a fire in a substation. that's knocked out the power. So for these reasons, when you have an emergency scenario, these can be very useful to at least get some areas operational. Another use case could be for supplementary lighting for underperforming areas. So very often you could have a old airfield that's going through reconstruction, development, or indeed just going through energy upgrades and trying to improve the efficiency. You often need to have lighting from two directions to meet the requirements of ICAO for shadows. So quite often you would have a series of masts, and then the last stands have been added at the end later. So either side of the end of the apron block, but then they don't have the final masts behind. So you only end up with having light from one side. So in order to achieve the bidirectional lighting, you could put the mobile towers on either side of those um, furthest available aircraft stands, and therefore you can then bring that back into compliance, an area which typically would be unable to comply with the requirements because the masts are simply just not there. It's also useful for, and I think we might talk about this later, but it's also useful for situations where power supply is unreliable or is unstable. And so we know there are certain regions in the world where there are problems with power, whether that's through just poor infrastructure, um, lower sort of levels of development, or could be times of war or other kind of unrest. So when that power is not available all the time, and you can't rely on your existing high mast fixtures, then you could use this as a backup or supplementary lighting for those areas. And sometimes we know that very old airports have lighting systems which are underperforming due to age and degradation. So if you're only able to achieve, 8 or 12 lux with your existing system and you're not passing your ICAO audits, then what you need to be doing is supplementing that with some mobile tower lighting to get a backup to 20 lux. So it's sort of saying, well, this area is not compliant, but if I put a tower or two in this area, I can get a backup to compliance. That's often much quicker than implementing a project to replace the existing old system. Sometimes that's difficult due to budget restraints, or sometimes difficult due to the fact that you need to go through a complicated procurement process. Sometimes it's difficult because you can't get engineering sign off, or the actual existing masts are so old that you would need to replace the whole structure, and then that becomes a much more expensive and complex process. So in those kind of scenarios, this is when it would be quite useful to use a mobile tower. Isolation stands, I think that's probably one of the last ones that we talk about. Isolation stands will be a certain stands in an aircraft in an airport where they're far away, and that's either used for safety and security. So if you think about an aircraft that's undergoing a security incident, maybe a hijacking, or there is a some sort of health emergency, viral outbreak, then that aircraft can be moved to an isolation stand. So it's parked, but it's away from the other apron areas. It's away from the commercial aviation buildings. So that area can be illuminated often with mobile towers because it doesn't require continuous investment in you know the infrastructure there because normally it's very far away, so you have to run the cables and the trenching, and it's quite expensive. So if you're not using it very often, it probably doesn't make a lot of sense to have the fixed high mast lighting there, and you can use the mobile towers. But also relates to remote stands. So sometimes occasional use for overspill, for seasonality, you have these remote stands which are quite far away from the main apron area, and those can be illuminated for 1 or 2 weeks for example, special reasons. Then you can use mobile towers for that. So really the question is, when does mobile solutions make more sense than using existing infrastructure, existing high masts? And really we sort of say it makes sense when you don't already have existing high masts installed. So if those don't exist, or they're not in the right location to illuminate the area that you need, it's very high capex to install new high masts because you need to do a lot of work around the trenching for the cables. You need to work on ensuring you have the proper foundations, which need to be designed, installed. You need cranes to put these masts up. You need quite a lot of specialist knowledge to install high masts with mobile towers. If they're static, then it has its own challenges. We do a webinar separately on the different types of high masts you can use. Um, but generally, it's expensive. So when you don't have the masts in place, this is a pretty good solution. It's great for issues with power supply quality because the mobile tower, um, which we sell called the EcoX model, it has a switch. So you are able to switch it on to use of a diesel generator, or you can switch it to a power cable. So when you're generally in an area that doesn't have stable power supply or intermittent, it's intermittent. In those cases, you can use the power when it's available. But when it's not, you press a switch and you go straight onto the diesel generator. So it gives you that flexibility, which we think is important in certain markets and applications. Um, it could be areas where you don't have ability to access the high masts for maintenance. Whether that's because they are very old and it's difficult to get to, or because they're positioned in certain areas that doesn't allow access. It could be because it's maybe not so common in airports, but it could be on a railway track. So we've seen masts where it's very difficult to get to because it's all around railways and it requires special permits and access, um, or because they are in an area that makes access very difficult because of military applications or other reasons. So, um, in those cases, if you can't get access to the mast to maintain the lights, then mobile towers are a good solution. It could be that, for example, you just don't have any specialists able to actually do the maintenance work, and therefore, in order to get those specialists there, could be complex or difficult. Um, and so, therefore, you would just use mobile towers for that. Um, this also could be useful for when you can't get the construction permits to put these masts in place. So you know that maybe a high mast permanent would be the right solution for the apron lighting, but actually, for one reason or another, it's impossible to get the permit. So these would be the times when you'd use it, and um, and also for times when you know that in the near future there's going to be some changes. It doesn't make any sense to invest into permanent lighting now when you know in 2 years' time the airport is going to be moved, closed. It might be relocated, it might be reconfigured, expanded. There might be big changes happening. And in fact, we've worked with few airports that knew they were closing. I think in the UK was one. We worked with one in Turkey. They said, look, the airport will be shut in the next 2.5 years. We need to service this area because we have the demand for lighting, but we don't want to put in the permanent infrastructure needed. So we'll put these mobile towers, and in 2 years' time, we can just move it to a new location. Um, so I think is a good point at the bottom there. Mobile lighting and permanent, they're not rivals. You need to figure out actually what is the right application for the lighting that you need, and therefore that'll dictate what kind of tools you will need to illuminate it. Um, so how do we decide? We've put in together 5 questions here, which you can sort of think about when you are deciding what the correct solution would be. Is how long the lighting is needed? Is it weeks, months, or years? Is this area fixed, or is it likely to move or change in the near future? Can permanent infrastructure be installed on site? If it can, then probably that's the first one to think about. If it's fixed and it's going to stay there for a long time, that usually dictates the choice for the permanent lighting. But if not, then of course we need to consider mobile. And is mains power available? or do we need a self-contained source? Or do we need diesel actually because the mains power is not available, not reliable? And often, how soon is the solution required? Because, for anybody to install new masts is typically a, 5 or 6 months project. It's a selection, it's engineering, it's permitting, supply chain, delivery. If we are shipping high masts from Italy, which is where we typically deliver high masts from, and your customer is in Australia, then that'll take several months for the high mast to get there, even after everything's approved. So especially in today's world where we can't fully rely on shipping lines to be as efficient as they used to be in the past, it makes it difficult to know how quickly we can get these up and running. But these mobile towers, they can be delivered pretty quick. I think we've even had them sent by air. So we had New Zealand, which needed them urgently for some kind of military application, and I think we shipped them by air, if I'm not mistaken, in several crates. So they can go fast. Um, so the key takeaways, and I've got one basically final one to end with, but the key takeaways are mobile towers are there for semi-permanent or temporary solutions. They're not a permanent solution, so it's not something you put in place forever. It's there only for the time being. And it's typically used in changing or restricted situations or dynamically changing ones. So it's when we can't be fixed and certain that these high masts are the right answer for this particular area. Permanent lighting suits, we know that permanent is good for long-term fixed solutions. I mean, that's where the right answer is. But sometimes we don't have that knowledge and we don't have that certainty. And so we have to think about mobile solutions. In fact, many airports use both. Um, of course, almost all of our customers that use mobile towers, they are using them in conjunction with, together with high mast lighting. So they are working hand in hand and they're not competing with each other. And the decision comes down to basically duration, flexibility, and site constraints. I think what I want to say is that it's critical to remember with these mobile towers, they allow the user to achieve EASA or ICAO compliant stand lighting um, straight away. So they're not designed to just provide additional lighting. They're designed to provide compliance with international standards, and they're designed also to perform in a certain way. So it's not that we just put these light towers, switch them on, and hope for the best. What actually happens is our design team in our technical office will run the lighting simulation like it typically would for any high mast using our photometric files, knowing the way our luminaires behave, if they would take into consideration uniformity and average light levels and glare. And once that project is complete, that project would be on an 8.5 or 9 meter height because that's the maximum height of these mobile towers. And we would then deploy a set of documents which show to the end user how to position these mobile towers on the apron so that once they're switched on and orientated correctly, you're able to achieve the compliance with ICAO and EASA on the uniformity and on the illumination levels and also on glare. And we're able to then record this and file it as evidence of compliance, which of course is the key point. So these are really mobile machines there to deliver compliance of lighting. Think of them as a tool that you can use to either supplement existing lighting or put in new lighting, but autonomously they can deliver compliance to any size aircraft apron, including CODEF, which is the biggest. That takes the 747 or A380. And then for smaller stands, you can consider that for a pack of 3 um, aircraft stands, you can use two machines next to each other to deliver compliance on three. So it's always design led. It's always starts with our engineers running the lighting calculations and telling you where to position them so that you can achieve that lighting level. That's the critical aspect. So that doesn't change in any way. It's still engineering led, it's still design led, but it's just we're able to move them around when we need to. So once they're in place, they typically will stay there in that location until the task is complete. So it's not that we're coming out every day and putting them in a new location. They'll always be coming to, I mean, you can take them off and on, and sometimes operation that's required. So they get taken out, and put away at night or in the morning or whenever, and they can be brought back the next day or in a week's time or in 2 months' time. But typically, when they're being used for a block of time, they will stay in the same place, or if not, there will be a certain marking, and then we need to be returned to the same place with the same orientation because we need to achieve those lighting levels, which we do through the design calculations. So that's the key takeaway. It's like a high mast tower, only it's mobile.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Yuli. That was super informative, and I hope everyone found that useful. So now we're just going to answer some questions, some of which you just covered in your last bit, but there's no harm in just going over those again. So our first question, are the requirements from ESA for mobile lighting solution the same for the normal stands? And do you help with calculating the optimal placement and height?
Yeah, so exactly, I think we did cover it. So EASA and ICAO don't in any way um, have a different approach for the types of lighting. The requirements are fixed and they are well known. You have to have the average light levels of 20 lux or above with a uniformity or ratio of 4:1 or better, and a glare rating typically of 50 and below. So those requirements don't change. When we are using mobile lighting to deliver that, it just means that we have to comply with that using a different set of tools, i.e., using the master MO4 luminaires set of four. We're restricted to which luminaires we can use because of the weight, and the hydraulic machine has to be able to lift them up and down easily. So we're limited only four luminaires, but typically that's enough for us to achieve those requirements. And yes, we would do all the work up front to demonstrate how they need to be positioned. In fact, we are doing some commissioning on a block of these aprons in Saudi Arabia next week, just to demonstrate compliance with the design that we put in place several years ago, whilst that airport was in design development.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Yuli. Our next question, can the towers be thought of as a permanent solution for apron stand lighting where construction of a new high mast is not possible?
Yes, they can be. What I would say is that it's probably then better to try and run power cables, even if they're not underground. You can typically put like a cable shield on top, and then you can run them along and use them from a power source rather than diesel, because I think for various reasons, due to expense and environmental reasons, it's potentially not the right solution to run them on diesel permanently. But on a power cable, then they run silently. You don't need to do the continuous maintenance on the engines. So it's a good solution for basically permanent, but it's probably more expensive than some other solutions if you know they're going to be there forever.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for that one, Yuli. We've got a couple more questions. So one question is, can one mobile lighting tower light a full aircraft stand, or would you usually need more than one?
So a full aircraft stand can be anything from a code, ABC, very small for small aircrafts, all the way up to code F, which is 80 meters by 80 meters. So we have to try to establish what kind of aircraft stand we're dealing with. Um, Generally, you would require to have on the bigger stands lighting from two directions. So normally what we would say is two mobile towers can illuminate a full aircraft stand up to code F to reach ICAO standards. Have we been able to achieve 20 lux with uniformity on a small code C stand in the past with one mobile tower? Yes, we have. But generally the best practice is it's two for one or sometimes two for two as well can work. But it needs to be designed depending on the layout and configuration and placement options for the mobile towers. I think we did recently a project in Grenada in the Caribbean, and that one was again a solution because the mobile towers, so the existing high mast towers were damaged in a storm. They were unable to bring them down because they were jammed and they didn't have the equipment to renovate and fix um, the mobile mechanism on the crowns to bring it down. So they were fixed and they were unable to operate. They were damaged. So they used those mobile towers, and I think they are being used in a permanent state because there's no real quick solution to fixing those existing high mast that they have on the apron there.
Okay, wonderful. We've got two more questions and then we'll call it a day. So, our second to last question, is there a way to receive feedback remotely from the tower, such as fuel level and lighting status?
Yes, so that can be done through a GSM. There's a SIM card that can be inserted and that can provide feedback. And I think there are ways to do it through a Wi-Fi communication too, but definitely through a GSM, it is possible. So they can be controlled also remotely. If you already have them out in the field, then you can send the messages to be able to start up outside of a sequence or outside of the programmed scheduled timing.
Okay, great. We're actually going to just try and squeeze in two more questions because we just had someone else ask another one. Um, so our next question, what is the rotation range of the luminaires? Would it be possible to position two floodlights in one direction and the other two floodlights 180 degrees opposite?
Yes. So the floodlights can be rotated in a 180 degree um, in each location. So they can both go 180 and 180. So you're covering 360 degree um, around the installation. And then they can also be tilted, I think, up to 45 degrees both ways, up and down. But we typically don't like the tilting above 20 degrees for glare. But yes, they have full flexibility, and quite often that's what happens. We have two going left, uh, top and bottom, and two going right, top and bottom. That's typically how they're orientated.
Okay, great. And regarding uniformity, since these towers are lower in height, does this still result in a uniformity ratio below 0.25?
Yes, absolutely. So because these luminaires have a very high asymmetric beam, they're designed, as you know, by our team to deliver specifically for high masts, then with that, and because it's quite a wide beam, we're still able to achieve the uniformity, um, even with a 9 meter height. So yes. And I think we have some, if you download the mobile tower um, data sheet and brochure, there are some examples of where we demonstrate with lighting design um, with two towers located on the edges of a CODEV stand, what is the uniformity and what are the average levels we're able to achieve. This is the reason why actually all these airports around the world are buying this solution is because it is able to deliver on the compliance. It's designed to deliver on the uniformity, on the average. And I think that makes it quite a unique solution because I have not really seen anything else in the market that can achieve those two things and also be mobile.
Okay, wonderful. I am going to be cheeky and just try and squeeze in one more question.
We've got plenty of time,
We've got 2 more minutes.
have we?
Yeah, we're only supposed to be half an hour with
Right.
questions.
Okay.
That's okay. So our last question, we need to do the do we need to do the calculations and verifications every time we move to a new place? So would there be implementation time and how long would you require for the new lighting requirements, calculations and verifications?
So yes, if you are relocating it to a new area, then we would need to run those calculations again. Our lead times for this kind of design is probably, 2 or 3 days. Sometimes in the busiest of periods could be 4 days. But we would need to do that every time. But if you are moving back to that same place where you've been before, so if you're going from A to B and then back to A, then actually you can just use the previous designs. Um, we are always ready to support with new designs. Our engineers work on a free of cost service to our customers. So whenever you need to move these towers, just please get in contact and we will update the designs and show you the new layouts and orientations. It's all part of the service.
Wonderful. Thank you. So that's all for now. So thank you to everyone who's joined us, and a huge thank you to Yuli as well for the presentation. Yuli's details are up on the screen now, so if anyone wasn't able to ask a question they maybe want to ask, you can email Yuli or please feel free to reply to me with the email I send out later. But again, a huge thank you for giving up your time to join us today. We've really enjoyed this and we hope that you have too. And
Thank
for
you.
anyone who wants to check out any of our other previous webinars, our Knowledge Hub is a great resource. So on there, you can find any of the previous ones we've done on things like CCT, uniformity, and this one will also go into the Knowledge Hub. So have a look on there. Lots of great content if you've got any more questions.
And please send us, if you want topics that we haven't covered before, if you'd like to know more about them, let us know because we love doing these webinars. We think it's a great opportunity for us to share our knowledge and experience, which we've built up over the last 1.5 decades doing this. And we love nothing more than to just being able to transfer that knowledge to you so that empowers you to make the right decisions in your business.
Yes, very well said. Okay, thank you everyone and have a wonderful rest of the day.